Which do you choose, the adventure boot or the MX boot? It's a really hard decision. How do you make it? In this video, I'm gonna go through which boot suits which kind of rider, and hopefully I'll be able to save you a decent amount of money along the way. This video was inspired by a poll I did recently on the channel while I was recovering. I asked you guys what you were wearing when you're doing your off-road riding, and surprisingly, 41% of you said MX or Enduro boots, and 48% of you said you were wearing adventure boots. Now, yes, an adventure boot is going to be more comfortable. It's going to also feel far more natural. It's not going to be as cumbersome when you're on the bike. You're going to be able to feel that brake pedal and that gear lever. And that's a big reason why I think a lot of people choose an adventure bike, is because it feels more natural. My experience when I first put my MX boots on, my very first pair, and hopped on the bike, I thought I made a huge mistake. I almost took them back. It was like learning to ride all over again. I couldn't feel the brake. I was missing gears. I thought I'd made the biggest mistake of my riding career. I was quite down about it. But I went through the forums and read through the seasoned veterans. They all told me to push through it, and within half a ride or a couple of rides, I would forget all about the fact that I had MX boots on my feet. And they were absolutely correct. I was so glad that I pushed through that initial discomfort, because the amount of times I've come off, or I've clipped a rock or a tree stump, or I've dropped the bike on my leg in a pile of rocks, these boots have saved me time and time again. I've never had an ankle or a leg injury the entire time I've ridden off-road. And if you watch my videos, I fall off an awful damn lot. Those MX boots have more than paid for themselves over the years. But comfort does matter despite safety, and it's the reason why I have both kinds of boots. If I intend to ride off-road, I take my MX boots every time. But adventure boots do have a place in your riding life. If you can afford to have both, an adventure boot is a fantastic option as a commuting boot, because they're generally waterproof, so it means you can turn up to work without soggy feet, but it also means you can walk around if you're going to the shops riding day to day. And if you do go on a ride and you don't intend to ride off-road, but you do see that dirt road, and we all know we can't help ourselves from time to time, it does give you the option of having enough protection to head down that dirt road without too much concern. And that's why I do have an adventure boot for those scenarios. Aesthetics is another big part of why a lot of people choose the adventure boot as well. Some people really identify with the adventure rider look. They want their whole tan adventure suit, their tan leather boots to go with a 1250 GS or their big Africa Twin. They want to look like Charlie or Ewan going around the world. It's completely understandable. A look is very important to a lot of people, whether you are a Harley rider, a cafe racer with all your sparkly helmets and old school looking gear, or an adventure rider. People like looking the part. So I can understand that, and if that's important to you, the adventure boot really suits that look. The flip side of that as well is the MX look definitely is attached to that bogan idiot rider. Think of the guy that doesn't have a license plate riding along the road at 1,000 kilometers an hour. People generally are a little bit standoffish if you do look like that rider, and I have experienced this where people have been quite aggressive because they've assumed I'm some young yobbo. I've also been accosted multiple times by farmers accusing me of casing their place to try and steal their expensive horses or whatever weird animal it is they're raising to sell, because I look like an MX rider with all my MX gear on. So that is understandable if you don't really want to identify with that look. None of that is a reason enough not to wear maximum protection. If people want to feel that way, let them feel that way. It's far better to be safe and well protected rather than look good, in my opinion. Now, waterproofing is another one that was cited as a big reason why people went with adventure boots over MX boots. And it's true, a lot of MX boots don't come waterproof. There are a few rare models, like a certain version of the Tech 7 from Alpinestars is waterproof, but for the most part, MX boots are not waterproof. What I will say on the matter is, it is very nice having an adventure boot, and if you're commuting and you turn up to work and it rains on the way, having that confidence knowing the boot is not going to get water into it is very nice. You don't need anything else making the day more miserable than it already has been because you have to turn up to work. Here's why it's pretty much useless off-road. For one, MX boots are actually pretty damn waterproof even though they're not designed to be. Because of all that hard plastic, I very rarely, if at all, have got water coming into my boot from rain. So they're actually pretty good at keeping the water out. But here's an example of why it doesn't matter. And this has happened to me out on a ride before. I've turned up to a ride and one of my friends is waxing lyrical about his brand new boots that are waterproof. I start inwardly smirking to myself because I've seen this play out before. It's winter, so it's pretty wet. There's a lot of water crossings. So they're looking forward to having dry feet for the day. And what that person hasn't thought about is the fact that the water goes up the trouser legs and then runs down the legs and into your boots. And we actually went through a few crossings where the water was deep enough to get over the lip of our boot. If you're riding by yourself as well, or if you're riding in a group, often someone will be selected as well to wade out into the water to see how deep it is. And most of the time, that water is going to be deeper than your boot. And my boots, they don't keep the water from coming in, but they also don't stop the water from coming out. As soon as I go through the water crossing, my boots are draining the water out and they're already starting to dry as the wind circulates back through them. Whereas the guy that we talked about, his magical Gore-Tex boots, went through the same water crossing and suddenly realized he'd bought 2 buckets of water, not waterproof boots. Because what stops the water coming in also stops the water coming out. He had soggy feet for the rest of the day. I didn't have a laugh at him directly, but I did have a quiet smirk in my helmet. Have a real think about whether you actually need waterproofing for your boots when you're riding off-road, is all I'm saying. Price point is a major one and how a lot of people get ripped off. And as a new rider in particular, if you're just getting into the sport, it's already expensive enough as you get all the kit that goes along with getting into the dirt. And if you make the wrong choice here, you really can waste a lot of money, particularly the adventure boot. It comes with what's called the adventure tax. Now, what exactly is that? It's basically a marketing gimmick. What the marketing guys do is they take any old piece of riding gear, if they attach the word adventure to it and make it look rugged, suddenly they can charge a whole lot more money for it because people that want the adventure gear will pay the adventure tax. It's all part of the look and the lifestyle. And that's no different for the adventure boot. You look at an adventure boot compared to an MX boot and tell me which one's more value for money, particularly safety wise. An MX boot is far more protective, probably has double, triple the amount of protection and rigidity and safety. And you're paying a quarter of the price sometimes for an MX boot over an adventure boot. So you've got to ask yourself, why are you paying 3, 4, 5 times the price for a boot that has half the protection? And this is what I asked myself when I was first starting out. I was at uni, working 2 jobs. I had no damn money to spare. Buying the right boot for the right price was very important. So I immediately disregarded adventure boots. I went to the bargain bin, got last year's model of a very cheap MX boot that had double the protection of any adventure boot that was on the shelves that day, and it cost me 1/3 of the price. Those things lasted me years and protected me. I never had an ankle or foot injury or leg injury the entire time I owned them, and I saved myself a whole pile of money. I would say if you want to save money, go for an MX boot. You can get the bottom tier budget MX boots, and they're still going to have far more protection than any adventure boot can offer on the market. I'll make this easy for you and point out why MX boots should be the choice if you're heading off-road in any serious way. Because protection should be at the top of your priority list, because you're not always going to see that rock, that tree stump, or that log hiding in the bush or the grass. And if you do clip it, your ankle is going to shatter into 1,000,000 pieces if you don't have a boot with maximum protection. Now, adventure boots do look rugged and like they have a lot of protection like an MX boot, especially compared to road going boots. They're going to look to the regular person like they offer a decent amount of protection. And that is true in a relative spectrum, but if you compare them to an MX boot, they cannot hold a candle to how much safety and protection an MX boot offers. And the number one question you have to ask yourself is, when you're sitting in that hospital bed with a shattered ankle, are you going to be thinking to yourself, gee, I'm really happy, I looked great and was really comfortable right up until the time my ankle shattered into 1,000,000 pieces? Or will you likely be thinking as you recover, I really wish I had to prioritize safety, that way I wouldn't be in this damn position to start with? I would encourage you, if you're just starting out or you're a returning rider and you're looking at your first pair of boots and you're intending to do a decent amount of time off-road, get an MX boot. Now, you don't have to do what I say because I'm just some bald dickhead on the internet telling you my experience, but I have learned a lot of lessons along the way and made a lot of mistakes and learned from them. So I'm just trying to impart that wisdom upon you. Until next time, guys, don't forget to stay shiny side up, and I'll see you in the next one.